So to define chattel slavery as capitalism is just, it's not true. But it's not about whether or not it's true or not. It's about if I say that, if I was on a TV show and say that, then that's their cue to cue me as a sexist. That's their cue to define me as a race traitor. They just make stuff up. The colleges aren't actually teaching now. The colleges are just making stuff up and then showing them how to demonize you when you question their bad work.
Well, and that's again the whole thing about how fun is gone. Mm-hmm. We can't have a discussion. We have to call names.
Absolutely.
I guess it was 1984, I want to say.
Mm-hmm.
The debate between Ronald Reagan and Walter Mondale.
Yes.
It was hilarious. And I loved Ronald Reagan. He was the best president of my lifetime. We haven't had a good one since. We haven't had a great one since then. I will say that. But the commentator said, President Reagan, you're going to be 73 years old. Do you have the stamina to do the job?
Right.
And he said, well, my opponent here, Mr. Mondale, he said, I will not make age an issue. I will not take advantage of his youth and inexperience in this debate.
Right.
And everybody laughed, including Mondale. Okay.
I mean, that was the greatness of. You're not going to see that in this debate.
No, you won't. I mean, and that's the thing. And it'll be called Crazy Joe or Sleepy Joe or something. It's name calling, and that's
one of the things I really don't like about Trump.
That's my main thing about Trump. He's a name caller and a bomb thrower. And I don't like that.
But what's interesting is I watched them mostly I watch all three stations, but I found myself watching MSNBC a lot during that election. Mm-hmm. In their own way, they were giving Trump credit for that.
Well, who was one of the biggest guys who said, "Look, Trump's going to win this election"? It was Michael Moore. He was the one all along that said, "Look, Trump's going to win this election. You people don't understand." He said that all along.
He did say that.
And he's a big lefty guy.
He is a lefty guy, but that people like Michael Moore, I believe, were glad Trump won. I believe Bernie Sanders is glad Trump won. That white, so-called quote working class rich boy liberal were the really big winners in the Democratic Party when Trump won.
So what you're saying is, okay, now you got Trump because you didn't get us. Maybe you'll because
you didn't pay attention to these 60, these older white guys that talked about blue collar, the fake blue collar guys. Because Bernie Sanders has never had a blue collar job in his life.
No, never.
Michael Moore is not a blue collar guy. He makes up fake documentaries.
Right.
So this fake white male. When I say fake white male liberal, that guy's a racist over there, but you need to look at us. That's what I found so hypocritical about the left. Is that they keep accusing the right of being racist. But then I look at them real deeply, and they're always trying to make their own whiteness a focus. Like they call you a racist for not embracing Black Lives Matter. But as soon as a black person pisses them off, you know how many times they've been like you graduated college. Yeah, I graduated college. Like I've had at least 24 white dudes that I know personally. Yeah, right. Maybe if you went to college. What? As soon as a black person, particularly a black male, questions them, it's, you're going to probably get shot. I mean, I've had a couple of people say.
Really?
Oh, yeah. They're saying, like, when I was talking about, I basically was like, I don't really believe these protests are helping black people at all. I think the crap's gotten out of hand. Everybody needs to go to hell home. You just told everyone to stay inside, and now you have 2 million people, mostly white people. You got white women burning down. I mean, there's at least a dozen different times where I see a white woman burning down something in the name of Black Lives Matter. This crap's getting out of hand. Why are white women burning stuff down?
Yeah.
And first he goes, well, that's sexist. The point. It's true.
You mentioned that to me last time. And so I thought, let me take a look at some of these films. You're right.
Yes.
I never noticed it before.
And you know what's going on? These people were stopped from having their young lives. Just stopped, just with no vote, no consultation, no conversation. Fauci and them said, everybody stay inside. And after 2 months, they went ballistic. And then George Floyd got shot. hey, if you go out on a protest, then all of the COVID stuff doesn't apply anymore. Mm-hmm. And then 1,200 health experts, that's when I was done. When health experts said, well, racism is so important, it's okay for 2 million people to be in the streets together. What?
Yeah.
You were the first. You were the first. Everything.
You were the first one I heard make that point.
You canceled everything, and now you're going, well. And I'm sorry, man. What happened to George Floyd was terrible.
It was.
But that's not why those people are in the street. That's not what's going on. Those people do not give two craps about George Floyd. And most of those white people out there, if they saw George Floyd walking down their street, they'd run inside. Yeah. I'm being really honest with you.
Because there's a big black guy who I'm probably afraid of.
Because white people, I've never gotten that from white folks like you or the white conservatives I know. I don't get an ounce of fear of black people from most conservatives I know. They don't fear other people. The people I know who get real itchy and antsy and anxious around black folks are the white people I know who are so adamant about the white man is bad and the white man needs to be stopped and you oppress people. But when you get them face to face with black people, particularly black men that aren't on the Oxford or aren't on the, they're not on the Stanford intellectual train, they're not Cornell West, all of a sudden they're like, wait a minute, what are those guys doing? So I don't buy it. And when I don't buy it, I had a couple white liberals say something like, well, you know that you're at risk of the cops shooting you. And I'm like, dude, you realize how racist that is? You basically kind of half-assed threatened to lynch me. Mm-hmm. You tried to check me with the cops shooting me. And I told him, you know the cops, they're not even shooting 20 unarmed black men a year. Mm-hmm. 20.
Yeah. Now,
that's bad, but
well, and that's the whole George Floyd thing. That's the whole thing that if we looked at it, and I use the collective we as a country, if we looked at where we were and where we are, mm-hmm. and see the progress that's been made, we're going in the right direction.
Absolutely.
Now, are we there yet? Nope. Not trying to be pessimistic, but will we ever get there? No. I don't think we ever will, but we'll continue to get closer. And this whole George Floyd thing, I knew of nobody who thought that George Floyd was in the wrong and the cop was in the right.
Not a single person.
Zero people.
It wasn't an issue.
Zero people. The cop was suspended immediately. Mm-hmm. Within about 3 days, he was charged. Mm-hmm. To me, we should have been celebrating the fact that the system worked, not setting parts of Minneapolis on fire.
I'll say this flat out. I don't see what there is to protest. That the protests have set things back. I'll be honest with you. And I'm not saying protests are bad. Protests is part of the American mm-hmm. First Amendment.
Absolutely.
But if you look at the protests in the South, and something people don't get is that it's not just about race. Different regions have different cultures. But when I go to the South, there's a lot of things I hear from black people completely different. For one thing, it's funny because black folks in the South often ask me what's wrong with people in general in St. Louis, not just black people. They're like, why are y'all so dangerous? And it's really funny. It's kind of like, I don't know. It's not dangerous where I live.
Well, I talk to a lot of people, and they say the same thing about St. Louis. And
it's in general, yeah, not just black folks, but yeah.
Yes,
yeah.
But if you just look at the numbers in St. Louis, I mean, there have been more murders and COVID-19 deaths in St. Louis City. Mm-hmm. There have been. Yeah. And if you look at the COVID-19 deaths, I mean, it's the Black Plague revisited.
Yeah.
But murders, nah.
Right. But in the South, in Atlanta, for the armed robbery situation, it never really, they had controlled very targeted protests mm-hmm. and they were very clear about what their intentions were. Mm-hmm. They didn't, and it was mostly black folks, I saw mostly black women. Mm-hmm. No rioting, no craziness. As soon as you start getting all these suburban white folks and all these college students who had their entire summers taken away, and now they can go out and party. They're doing the electric slide. They're doing shots. Yeah. They're going to Seattle, and this one dude's like, that guy looked like Superfly with like 5 white women with machine guns. It looked like something out of the 70s. And everyone's like, this is to protest the police. I'll say this: protesting the police is a straight up stupid ass waste of time. The police aren't just running around shooting people. The problem we're having is a systemic problem, and it starts with dummies calling the cops on people when you don't need to call the cops on people.
Absolutely.
Like that woman at the football game. Okay, well, she's there and she's not wearing a mask. You know what you do? Stay 6 feet away from her.
Yeah, stay away from
Someone
her.
called the cops on her, and there's these white liberals on my page, and there's a couple of them. This one woman made one of the women on my page who's applauding this had made a couple comments toward me about me not being able to read. White woman liberal.
Really?
Yeah. And she's applauding this woman getting arrested. But they're the same people that said it was cool to run in the streets during COVID-19 because the police were so racist. But if you're beating up a white woman that you don't like, if you're beating up Karen, they love the cops.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah. I don't get that. And if, again, we're the most diverse society in history, why can't we just all say we're Americans and leave it alone at that, and then try our best to just do the right thing, to steal a line from Spike Lee? But for whatever reason, we don't do that. And you were going down a path.
Control.
I think it is control. I mean, if it's not control, what else? I mean, sure, Arthur Conan Doyle said in the Sherlock Holmes books, how do you find out who's guilty? How do you find out what happened? You eliminate everything else, and it's got to be control.
If you're Nancy Pelosi, and you don't make the Republicans a bunch of racist plutocrats, why the hell would anybody care about you? Nancy Pelosi sucks. Nancy Pelosi sucks. I'm sorry.
The people in her district love her. They reelect her every time. Every time.
Right. And they reelect her because she is part of that ideology. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. But if you remove that, if black people were no longer oppressed, if women were no longer feeling like they're victims of institutional misogyny, if you remove people being angry at rich people and realizing, hey, in general, there's a social premium to even rich people that most people without money get to enjoy. Uh-huh. If you reinterpret those values, they're not going to reelect her. They're reelecting her because she represents those values as manifested by these ideological constructors in the universities, in the media, in their own communities. But you have to have a bad guy. Yeah. A big thing about growing up in the 80s and early 90s was you had all these black folks who would affirm their blackness by finding 4 or 5 black people to make Uncle Toms. That's how you proved how bad I'm a real black person. Those black people over there. But at some point, every black person was called an Uncle Tom by someone who didn't like them. It's a system of control. You don't have to debate. It's the same thing when Glenn Beck would call anyone they don't like a progressive.
Yeah.
Oh, that person, he's a progressive.
Yeah.
You don't have to debate. When you call someone a name and when you reduce somebody to this real easy, simple, one-term thing, you're just a progressive.
Well, and that's the whole thing. It's the name calling. It can't be, look, you think this on this topic, and I disagree with you. You can't do that, and I don't know why. I mean, Ronald Reagan,
because then you have to know what you're talking about.
Good point. Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill got things done.
Right.
Even Bill Clinton and Newt Gingrich got things done, and those guys were diametrically opposed from one another. The Supreme Court, which is a big lightning rod right now, two of the best friends on the Supreme Court were Ruth Bader Ginsburg
Scalia
and Antonin Scalia, and they were on total opposite ends of the spectrum. But you know what? Okay, I think this, you think that. Let's go have dinner.
But the people would be surprised on how many 8-0. There were a lot of 8-0 decisions. There were a lot of 9-0 decisions.
Yeah.
But they don't show those because those don't sell.
That's exactly right.
And I know the people in political media say, even if there's no fight, we're going to make a fight because that's how I make money.
Well, if you think about it, way back when we had ABC, NBC, CBS. Those were the three networks. You could use maybe PBS, but that was it. If you want to get your news, you had to watch either Uncle Walter or Peter Jennings or
Tom Brokaw.